There are two barmaids at the Ormond Hotel, and some people like to say that they are representatives of the Sirens. That's possible. I mean, they're women and the men are clearly attracted to them. But I think there's a deeper level of what these sirens mean, because Bloom is exposing himself to music and memories and ideas, these memories and feelings in his head that he wants to avoid in a lot of ways, but he also wants to experience. So for me, that I think just identifying the barmaids as the sirens is a really shallow interpretation. Like, I think it's one of those things, those correspondences that Joyce would be very cynical about and saying like, oh, you're reading this, just forget the correspondences and see what is going on here. And Bloom is, as he has throughout the book, thinking about his relationship with his family, especially his wife Molly, and the past that they've had together. You could also see one of the songs, Ma Paris, as talking about a lost love, as something that might tempt Bloom to interfere with Boylan. He could easily go up to Boylan and say, oh yeah, how you doing, Boylan? I was just heading home. And then Boylan would be like, oh, I guess I better not go there after all. But he doesn't interfere. That, I think, maybe also a siren in terms of something that Bloom could act on, and it would maybe help him, but it wouldn't avert disaster, because it wouldn't change the status of the relationship between him and Molly. He knows that if Molly wants to have this affair, he has to step back. The way that Joyce talks about the two barmaids may be a little confusing. He calls them bronze and gold. Bronze is Lydia Douce. She has, I assume she has gold, like kind of red colored hair, reddish goldish hair. But she's also bronze because her skin has been nearly sunburnt from a vacation recently. She went up to, the town is called Rostrevor, about 118 kilometers north of Dublin, and she got a bit of a tan, so she's bronzed. The other woman is Mina Kennedy. She has blonde hair, and she is called gold because of this. And from what I infer from the text, it seems that Miss Douce, Lydia Bronze, is the more attractive of the two, even though you may think of gold as the more highly esteemed. It seems like more of the men are flirting with Lydia Douce. The opening for this episode is probably the most confusing of any episode yet, and we've had some pretty confusing openings. I think this one, though, because it goes on for like a page and a half, is real frustrating for the reader. I can't imagine how this was taken the first time people read this, but you will pick it up what the idea is. All these little sentences refer to things that happen in the episode, but you won't know about it until the retrospective arrangement. You may want to just jump ahead to the second page about the middle where it says begin. That is really where the actual narrative starts, or you can just read it and be confused the first time. That's okay. There's this concept of the whole-on, that the whole is also a part in a larger structural whole, but it's also a whole that can be divided into smaller parts. So I think Joyce is toying with all these concepts that weren't quite fully, I mean, they'd been explored in philosophy and math, but I think that in the 20th century they were explored even more. Joyce spent several months writing this episode, including all these musical allegories and things that even I don't completely understand. I'm familiar with fugues and counterpoint and things like that, but I cannot call out every single detail in this episode. And there have been, I think, dissertations galore in the journals about this episode, if you want to know. It's like Aeolus. Remember, with rhetoric, there were tons of little rhetorical techniques. Similarly here, we're seeing Joyce do with language things that are normally done with music. So how he incorporates those, you can find a lot more about. I'm not going to cover every little nod to a fugue or whatever, because this is Ulysses for beginners, not Ulysses for music majors. Strangely for Joyce, Sirens is going to begin almost right where Wandering Rocks leaves off. You remember that vice-regal cavalcade was trolling through the city, and it passes by the Ormond Hotel. So that's where we're going to pick up. The barmaids are going to watch as it goes by, and they're going to be gossiping. Also in the hotel, there's this busboy who is referred to as being impertinent, and there's a waiter named Pat who is, the few things we know about Pat is that he's very hard of hearing and that he's bald. Bloom is back at center stage after taking the back seat for a while, but he's now the center of our attention again. He is going to be beginning this episode by purchasing some stationery so that he can write back to Martha Clifford, that woman that replied to his advert. So he is in the stationery store. Be sure to contrast how Bloom deals with the shop girl with how Blazes Boylan dealt with the shop girl. Bloom is just so much more shy and humble. As Bloom is on the street, he sees Blazes Boylan. This is not the first time he's seen him today. Another coincidence that he keeps running into him. So he decides to follow him and see what's Boylan doing there. Why isn't he at Molly's? Boylan is going into the Ormond Hotel to meet briefly with Lenehan and then take off. But Bloom doesn't know that. Bloom runs into Richie Golding, the uncle of Stephen Dedalus, who I'm not clear who suggests. It's kind of ambiguous, I think, from the dialogue. Joyce doesn't indicate who is referring to the Ormond as the best value in Dublin for lunch or dinner or whatever. So either way, though, they decide to go in and have a bite to eat. While he's in the Ormond, he's also going to be writing to Martha Clifford, and consider that he's doing this at the same time that the affair with Boylan is going to be happening. That's kind of, Bloom may not be acknowledging it, but it seems at some level that he's having his own affair at the same time. Bloom is clearly anxious and he's trying to do something to handle that anxiety. Other men are going to be entering the Ormond Hotel. The way that I visualize this scene, and again, this is one of those things that I wish we had some good interior photos, but the way that I see it is, I imagine the bar, maybe I'm thinking of one of the movies perhaps, but I imagine like the bar and then like this separate dining area that has like a door on it. And so that's where Bloom and Golding are going to be eating. And then in this main bar area, there's going to be the piano. That's where they're going to be singing. So Bloom is going to be hearing these other men as they sing while he's eating, but he's not going to be visually able to be seen by them or see them. It's kind of like the Sirens, he's just going to hear them. But it also ensures that Blazes Boylan does not see Bloom. So some other people who enter include Lenehan. He's meeting with Boylan. He's going to talk about that device that Tom Rochford has. And we also have that trio of men, Simon Dedalus, Father Cowley, and Ben Dollard. They're going to be the ones really at the piano singing and so on. Being a very musical episode, the songs, don't think for a minute that they are accidental, that Joyce just haphazardly threw in some songs. These songs clearly have a message that pertains to our story. The two main songs that are sung, I would say, Ma Paris and The Crappie Boy. Ma Paris is the song about a long lost love and longing. This is just when Bloom is suffering so much thinking about the affair that Molly's going to be having. And then the other one, The Crappie Boy, is a song about a martyr who is suffering. There's a lot of suffering going on as Bloom has to imagine what is happening with Molly at that moment. Some interesting history comes up as Ben Dollard, you remember him, he's this tall guy with a bass barrel tone voice who we learned this story about when he was younger and Bloom, all of them were younger, that at one point he needed a dress suit and he didn't have one. So Molly at that time, Molly Bloom, was doing this kind of side business to make a little extra money. She would buy and sell secondhand garments. So when Ben Dollard needed a suit to, I think they call it a wedding suit. I don't know if he necessarily had to go to a wedding or if he just needed the suit, but he needed it for singing at some point. And the suit that Molly gave him was apparently tight, and his penis was very visible, to put it much less subtly than the text that Joyce relates it. It was very clear. Everybody thought it was very funny, but he sang anyways, and Bloom thinks that this connects with him having a deep bass voice. Deep bass voice.